Alistair, who are you when no one's around?
Surprising, adventurous.
You said you grew up with anger.
You have to kind of understand your different gears, right? If you don't have money to eat, you're gonna be motivated.
But then how do you stay hungry?
That's an athlete thing.
Do you see that you're a great fighter with a great career?
It's a good thing you enjoy the journey, but I think you also should take time to celebrate the wins. If I look at myself, the losses gave me a lot of insight.
Is it true that at some point you had only 20 euros and you had to choose whether to spend it on petrol to go to train or to eat?
And the first loss came, and then the second loss came. I remember the third loss, my private contract got ripped up, and it was like, okay, what am I gonna do now?
Hi everyone, I'm here with Alistair in today's interview. I think we tried to cover a lot. Of course, for the people who love what he did for a living in sports and longevity, we talked about that, but we also talked about the person. So I personally enjoyed it. I don't think he's done a lot of long interviews, so hopefully you get to know the person behind all the titles, I enjoyed it. I hope you did.
I did. A real conversation. We went a little bit in depth. Yeah, I'm not used to that, but good energy.
Thank you.
Good, everything good. So.
Yeah, and there is a challenge somewhere in the interview, so you need to watch and see if you want to join us on the challenge. I hope you like the interview. If you know him, I hope you know him better now. If you don't, find him, support him, follow him, and the same with our show, and we're always looking to give you better episodes. Thanks. I noticed you have notes on the iPhone cover, just now.
Oh, this is my nutritional thing.
Ah, you keep them as notes?
Yeah, it's just my nutritional schedule, just stay on point.
Okay.
That's an athlete thing.
Okay.
Right.
You eat how many times a day?
Well,
I saw an old
let's
video.
not look at this, but I'm high. I'm a lot in nutrition, but basically heavy lunch, a little bit lighter dinner. Yeah.
At some point, you were having 8 meals a day?
Yes, when I was kind of full on fighting, super heavyweight.
Yeah.
8 meals a day.
saw
Steak
that.
every day, muscles.
Okay, let's start. So my first question is a classic question. Alistair, how are you really doing?
I'm good. I'm great.
What
Moved
the-
here, living here in Dubai. The weather, the sun is always shining. Retired. Now, the landscape is very spectacular, so we might do something there again. I'm training, I'm healthy. What can I say? I'm married, beautiful wife, good friends. Very happy.
That's good. What makes you happy? If we dissect it to components, like a cake, what makes Alistair happy? Ingredients.
So I understand what makes me happy in the sense of I just need to have my routines, which is sport, obviously. I've been doing that all my life. Healthy eating, food. Yeah, goals. You need to have your goals. Beautiful wife. We're in Dubai. I learned at an early age that you need to fill your day with things that make you happy. And yeah, fighting was done. I just kept doing that.
Was it hard to switch after fighting? Because fighting, I can assume, and correct me if I'm wrong, can keep you extremely busy, even before a fight by months. So you have something, you're consumed with, I need to eat, sleep, stretch, blah, blah, blah. And then suddenly, you take all of that away. Suddenly, I have more time.
Correct. So I'll tell you how that went. So let's go back to my last fight, 2022. October was my last fight. And after, my body, even before, was 1 year I was hurt on my lower back. And I can kind of keep that under control with a lot of physical therapy and a lot of ice baths. So I could kind of keep training and keep pushing towards the fight. But then after the fight, the usual trick did not work. And I got hurt on my back and I literally couldn't train anymore. So what happened was, in this time, I was still trying to train, but I couldn't. It would go right 2 days, 3 days, and I would hurt myself, couldn't train for 2, 3 days, then, and so on and so on. And after approximately 6 months, I realized my body is broken, and I just can't peak, I can't get to a certain level anymore, and that was the moment that I retired. Now, because I was injured, because I couldn't train properly, my shape went down, my muscles kind of went down a little bit, even to the point that when I went up 2 stairs, I got tired. Your cardio also goes if you don't train it. And that was the moment that I realized, okay, I need to train, I need to stay in shape. And I just did what I always did, create a game plan, what needs to be in the game plan, right? Now, of course, there's no opponent, but there is, you want to be happy and you want to use your body and you want to, whenever you go up those stairs, you want to not be out of breath. So I just grabbed my game plan chart and I just start filling. We need to have the trainings in there. The diet needs to be on point. There also needs to be a goal, right? So there was no goal. Usually the opponent was the goal. Now it was more like, okay, what are we going to do? So that required some thought process. But in general, healthy living, healthy lifestyle is what I've been doing all my life for the fights.
Yes.
That was one of the cornerstones that needed to be in my future as well.
Okay, I'll go back, rewind. Who are you when no one's around?
I would say very interested in life, very curious about our planet, curious about people, curious about cultures, curious about history. History is something that I've been dabbling in since I was 15. Right, and then it starts with, okay, the First World War, the World Wars, what is that? Conflict. But then the Second World War was like, oh, that was the last big conflict. First World War was before that. How did they originate? How can it be that it explodes in such a massive way, escalates? So a lot of reading, what do you call it, library. This was even before internet. And I was always fascinated by these books, and pictures and what's happening, documentaries. Now with the internet, it's very easy. You just go online and there's like literally thousands of documentaries. But back then, whenever there was something on BBC, usually had the documentaries on. And I was very fascinated with the history. How did things came to be and came about? And very interested in tipping points, right? Because there's a no, and then there's a yes. And what makes it tipping? What makes it tip? And just curious about life. Also my ancestor, of course. I'm half Netherlands. My mother is blonde hair, blue eyes. My father's Jamaican, very different. We were born in England, lived there for 5-6 years. Then parents divorced. Then we moved back to Netherlands. Was never really in touch with my Jamaican side, and my father was in and out of my life. But I did end up going to Jamaica and kind of investigating that a little bit. Beautiful country, beautiful people. History is also beautiful. So it's been, you live, and to me, just curious about how things work. Where do we come from? Where are we going? All the subtopics. What do I want to do?
Are you more for aliens exist or don't exist?
Aliens exist or they don't exist. They have to exist. Because otherwise we would be the only life in the universe. And the universe is quite big. So there has to be something else, I would think, out there. But of course there's no evidence for that, so I couldn't...
I'd make the same bet. I think the probability of way more intelligence and creatures is way higher for a bet than only us being the center of the universe. It
would be scaring if we are alone, and it's also scaring if we're not alone. Right?
And there's this saying, because you love history, they say that history repeats itself and patterns repeat. Do you agree that if you really study human behavior and history, that we do repeat similar patterns?
Yes. If you study history, and not just a history book, but you read on that day in, day out, which I have the interest to do that, and I've been doing that for 30 years now, then you can kind of see patterns. And I know it was also an interest in the human psyche. I don't know. You can kind of predict also behavior. So yeah.
Okay. If I asked you to summarize your childhood in 3 words.
In 3 words, I would say surprising, adventurous. Right, born in England, but then we moved at young age to Netherlands. It's a very big change, right? Because you're out of your. I went from speaking English to speaking Dutch. Not that big of a family, but still, yeah, learning journey. That's 2 words. Curiosity, I would make that then. So surprise, curiosity, and what would the third be?
You said surprising, adventurous, and curiosity?
Yeah.
Okay. What's the best childhood memory you have?
Would be Christmas with my grandmother. Yeah, we had our Christmas dinners. We were close. Not a big family, right? Our Dutch family was not that big, but special relationship with my grandmother. She turned 103. She passed in 2018.
Okay.
But yeah, it was very special to, when I think back, there was always a warm sensation, warm feeling, some gifts. And yeah, it was nice.
103.
103.
Man, I was just reading on the plane the Ikigai book that's been on my queue for a long time, and I finally took it on the plane. And a big chunk of the book is about this island in Japan where most of I think I don't know the word, it's centennials.
Centennials, yes.
Some people
over 100.
Yeah. And how they found their purpose and what are the things that made them, on average, live longer, especially in this island in Japan. So it's pretty cool that your grandmother is one of them,
Social life, right? Social life, happy thoughts. I actually study, it's one of my interests, longevity. That's also what gave me the length of my career. So I know what you're talking about. But it's clean food, positive thoughts, be near the ocean, right? An island, right? Seafood.
And I think the island concept is a very interesting concept because you notice when you visit islands, whether it's the Caribbean or Bahrain or Maldives, you notice people in islands are usually warmer and they're more community compared to a metropolitan city. So I think that has a lot to do with it. People know each other and, you know.
The social aspect of things. Right, yeah.
Okay. So that's one of your happiest. And what is one of the worst?
It would have to be, I remember thoughts of my parents splitting up. And we moved to the Netherlands. And there's a big question mark. You don't know what happened, right? Because there's a change. But you know that you kind of feel their stress. My mother was sad. And yeah, and we kind of went to like a temporary home before we kind of went to our final home. But there was uncertainty, and it's like a big change, a big shock. Things have to kind of land again. And yeah, in my case, there was also no explanation. And even though you did get explained, you're young, right? I was 4 or 5, so you don't really understand. So yeah, that was a little bit sad. I could also see the effect it had on my brother, Valentine. It had like
He's older?
3.5 years older, yeah.
How did it affect him?
Well, it's change of foundation. Foundation is falling apart, and he had to go into a what do you call it again? It's kind of like so he reacted to it different than me. I was younger also still, and he was became more difficult behavior. So he went to it's not a caretaker home, but it's where you, what do you call that again?
Like juvenile? No.
That's prison, but
it's like not prison.
If you're like a troublemaker, yes. If you're a troublemaker, then you get put there.
So it was something like that, like a facility to take care of troubled young. So he would be 7.5 or 8.
Yeah, he was 8.5.
And he reacted badly to the divorce, huh? Is it the divorce or he got?
It's a change because your foundation is away, right? And then and some kids will react calm to it,
Yes.
But yeah, he was outgoing and a little bit more troublemaker. But ultimately, yeah, sad.
It's very interesting because I got divorced, and my two sons, one of them comprehended the change because Majid was, I think, I would say around 4 or 5, similar to your age. And he says, I remember the car that picked us up from our old house to the new
How
house.
old is he now?
Now he's 16. But the younger one was born, like he was 1 year old, so he doesn't, so he was kind of groomed in the new system. So I don't think he has a comparison of or benchmark. But Majid, it was so, like you're remembering, you're 44 now and you're remembering something from 4 years old. That's 40 years old memory. And I find it so interesting how us as children, we remember such crucial, it's just stuck. And that he remembers the car color.
Accurately.
Yeah, that moment. And he's like, I knew there was something off. We didn't say it to him literally, I guess, but he remembers. So when you say you at 4 and your brother at 8 and they remember and there's a reaction, it is a monumental change for a child, you know? And then what happened to your brother? How long did he have to stay there?
So he was in there a couple years, I would say 3 or 4 years.
Okay.
And then he came live home again. And yeah, but of course it's going to have a dramatic shift, right? Because you're there with all the troublemakers. Yeah, so it kind of aggravated, I would say. But yeah, so you asked me about the worst memory. That was maybe one of the worst, right? Uncertainty, even when you're young. The feeling of uncertainty, yeah, it kind of, you don't really know what happens, right? So it does get to you a little bit.
Do you think, like, maybe we'll go on a philosophical angle, do you think these kind of traumas or shifts or instability are part of the formula that makes a successful person if he takes advantage of it? So you click pause. Why do you click pause? I hear this often that people that watch the show, they click pause when I ask a question because they ask it of themselves or their friends or their family, and then they have a conversation. So me and the team, we worked for over 2 years to do over 70 questions here with a die and some QR codes where I pop up. But the point was to take the conversation outside the white studio. You know, we're blessed to have these conversations, but what if we want these conversations to go to different homes and different friend groups and colleague groups and really have intimate, deep, strong conversations that maybe you've never had before? So that's why we created this game, and it's had very good feedback. People love it, and I hope you love it too. Try it out and let us know. The website is there. The link is in the caption. Enjoy it and let us know.
Absolutely. And a very sharp observation. Because if I look back, those kinds of traumas have shaped me. I've displayed in my fighting career a very strong drive, resilience, long length of career, and I'm sure that the beginnings, the origins, is rooted somewhere in that trauma, right?
I read that you said you grew up with anger. Can you explain?
So when I grew up, I was, you start to wonder things and you start to understand things. And my father was not there. We also didn't have a lot of money. So there was kind of like a lack of things. And I remember that I was like upset. There was some anger in me because of that. Absolutely.
And do you remember the first time you had the feeling that I need to protect myself, like to fight or to protect or defend?
That was when my brother took me to the gym.
Okay.
And beforehand, I didn't really experience that feeling. But in the gym, and it was not a choice to go to the gym. It was my brother telling me, hey, you need to learn to defend yourself. You're coming with me. Get in the car. And so we're training in Amsterdam, 30-minute drive. And there's all bigger gentlemen. And all of a sudden I had to fight. And yeah, sparring, right? And you're going to get punched in the body. And I'm like, oh. And it toughened me up. right? You learn to go through resistance. It was also a group that was pushing on, come on, keep going. So that also was very, I would say, instrumental to building my character. But yeah, it was my brother who got me into it.
And can I ask about your brother?
Of course.
Okay. So because I find it interesting that two young boys go through, because there is this, I was talking to my therapist about this, and I was saying, I'm lucky that my mother gave us support, my father was different, and all of these things. And why am I hungry? But my brothers are a bit different. I'm ambitious in a way.
Very interesting, right?
Why the nature nurture
yes.
argument. So for me, I have now a good case study. I have two brothers with a 3 to 4 year gap, and they come from a similar trauma and a similar background. One becomes a troubled child that wants to lash out. One becomes quiet. And then your career, I don't know his career, but I know he fought also, I think, right?
He fought as well.
Yeah.
Quite a long career.
Okay.
If I would sum up his career, very successful in the first half, and the second half, less motivated, not successful.
Why?
But kept on fighting. First half, there's some talent, there's some drive, there's some optimism. Second half, lack of motivation, I would say. Maybe also the wrong motivations, the wrong incentives to fight.
But you had a longer career and sustainable more in terms of success. So if you had to zoom out and not be Alistair, and you're looking at these two guys, what would you say was the different component in this formula that made the Alistair stay a bit longer or hungry longer?
I did everything I learned. So how I approached fighting was there's the actual fight. So there's fight techniques, there's fight training, but there's also supplemental strength conditioning training. And then supplemental, you can also eat in a certain way to improve your performance. And there's like so many ways you can alter your patterns to increase your performance. And I was very much searching for this information, and I was acting on it. And if I look at my brother, less motivation to do that. He was working also, he had a security company, and he was also doing that. So you can imagine if you're in the weekends, you go to sleep at 3 a.m. or 2 a.m. or whatever the time was, your performance is not going to be the same on Monday morning. Right? And I was more like, okay, less talent, but everything for the performance. So I was not going to have a job. I would not even go out because I wanted to be fit for the next day training. And if I zoom out, and I've learned so much about nutrition, so much about work, rest, recovery, so much about training patterns, and I did it. Right? I put it in my routines. And if I look at my brother, he didn't do that. Even when I would talk to him about, hey, you should remember we went to Japan, and he did not like sushi. Sushi was very foreign the first couple of times we went, and he would go to McDonald's. And not twice a day going to McDonald's. While everybody understands, McDonald's is not good. We had conversations about it. You shouldn't do that. But then, a little bit stubborn, a little bit like, So I think that's, if you zoom out, those kinds of things.
There's this nice point I like to discuss is the difference between interested and committed. When I talk to someone, I'm like, are you doing it because you're interested or because you're committed? If you only do things because you're interested, once you're not interested, you'll stop. But if you're committed, even when you're not interested, you're committed.
Yep.
Whether it's marriage, your business, your gym routine, your food.
You're going to do it.
You're committed. You're like, even if I feel like shit, I am going to go to the gym. It doesn't matter. And I think people who usually succeed are the ones that don't do things because their mood is nice today. No, I do it. Doesn't matter. I have to do it. And probably that has a big thing in your life is your commitment to what you
has to be, otherwise you can't do that. No, and then of course also learning the different facets and the factors that push you towards maximum performance. And an extreme discipline in doing that, right? Of course, for training camp, 2 months, 3 months, you need discipline. You need to do it. And looking back, I kind of always, I have 93 fights altogether, and I was always doing my best.
Because I love sports in general. And when I see, it would be nice to know your opinion. When you see people, whether it's Conor McGregor or other fighters or footballers even, when they finally peak or get a really good package or a good award or a few, we can argue that something is gone, whether you like it or not. You can deny it and sit and deny it, like, no, I'm still as hungry. You're not as hungry, because when you were pushed against no option other than success, that level of hunger, when you know if you fail, your family's not going to eat properly, for the rent will be due in 3 months, you're screwed. It's a very different type of drive.
Therefore, you could always say, when you're coming up and you have to think about how are you going to pay the rent, and you actually have that foundation of motivation, that is the driving factor, or a large part of driving factor. And I do have to admit, when if you have 100 million in the bank, it's different, right? You're not hungry anymore.
But then how do you stay hungry when you have that 100 million? When you have a
You need
trophy?
to change the goalpost. So the goalpost needs to, like, my goalpost was from, I'm going to win my next fight. I was not thinking about the world championship when I started, right? It was just my first fight, and I did want to become like my brother. So he was fighting in Japan. I wanted to fight in Japan. I was 19 when I had my first fight in Japan. He was 19 as well. And slowly by slowly, I was just raising the goalpost. When I was like 22, 23, I was thinking, okay, I can get world champion here. 24, I was world champion. And then slowly just raise. And if you look at the grades, I think they're doing similar. Right? And then after championship, what comes after? Two times, triple. And then eventually you're going to become a legend, right? It becomes legacy. But it has to kind of go up. Like when I started, I was not thinking about legacy.
I watched recently the Rafa Nadal docu-series on Netflix, which is pretty cool if you didn't watch it. And there was such an interesting point. And I related so much, because my team would criticize me, like when we win an award or best podcast or whatever, I literally probably celebrate with a smile for like 3 seconds, and then I move on. And they're like, like, you don't want to, let's go out. And I don't. Like, I'm good. I'm like, okay, let's get back to work, and I think of the next thing. And for a lot of people, that's very foreign. Like, what's wrong with you technically? And then Rafa said something that clicked. He won, I think, Wembley or something finally. Like, you could see that he was really striving for it. He finally got it. And he celebrated for probably 5 minutes, right? And then he said, I'm not a winner, I'm a competitor. And that clicked, that huge difference between some people they're just going for that best actor award or best player award or best fighter, right? And there are people who are just competitors. Like, that's nice, it's an extra, but I'm here to compete. I want the next competition.
So it's a good thing you enjoy the journey, but I think you also should take time to celebrate the wins. And also even the losses. If you can even do that, celebrate, I didn't win today, but I'm still going to take a moment, a reflection.
Yeah.
Because even if I look at myself, the losses gave me a lot of insight.
Yeah, I was
a lot of
ask you.
adjustments to make. And in my career, it's a long career, right? So there's highs, a couple of lows as well. But I always was, by looking at the losses and adjusting a lot of facets, team, coaches, sparring partners, weight class, I could climb back up. So, and then in hindsight, you learn from everything, right? The wins you celebrate, but the losses you're adjusting.
So you say, did you win more from your losses or wins?
I made sure that if I won, I celebrated, and the formula is working. But it can kind of creep in, right? The mistakes can creep in. But when you lose, you need to adjust the formula. You need to adjust. You need to change something, or double up on something. You need to observe, and your team also needs to observe.
In heavyweight, this is a specific question. In heavyweight fighting, because you guys are so strong and so big, I feel sometimes even if you have the best fight, but you just miss one opportunity and you get one hit, it's not like featherweight or lightweight. Lightweight, you can recover. Heavyweight hits you, it's like a truck hit you, and you're like, shit, I
Yeah.
just skipped a second. So all like 90% you're doing great, but one mistake. So technically they didn't fight better. You made one mistake and it's a huge cost. So it's not always like, would you call it a fail? Or like, even though you had a great performance? But it's one slip.
I've lost some of those fights. I was
Yeah.
fighting a great fight and boom, over. And again, it's both the beauty and a little bit the curse of the fight game. You know, if I recall one fight, the Rosenstrike fight, on paper I would have beat him. And maybe I went in there not really taking him serious, and I was just dominating him easy. There was like no threat. Somehow it kind of sussed me into sleep. And then I heard the clicker, last 10 seconds, and it was a 5-round fight. So you fought for 30 minutes, and the last 10 seconds I hear a click, and all of a sudden I get uppercut and a right overhand, and then I even thought like, okay, we survived, but we didn't survive because it was right on the finish of the fight, so like a little bit. And I was like, okay, so yeah, I don't know. These things happen, right?
What did fighting give you that life didn't?
Fighting gave me growth. It gave me, and through life you're living, right? So through living gave me growth, adventure, a much deeper understanding of life, right? Win-loss, traveling, cultures, Japan more than 70 times. I lived in the US for 11 years. Travel all over Europe, Brazil, South Korea, Thailand many times. Now living in Dubai. And yeah, that all started, it started with the sport. And it just kept on growing and expanding. And so I don't know, yeah, what did sport give you? It gave me life and adventure and growth and also setback. And then you grow again. And yeah, the process of life.
Do you think emotions, I was thinking about this when I was like writing the question. Do you think emotions are a good thing in a fight or a bad thing?
If you're emotional, bad, always. And that's what you're seeing. When you're seeing two people, for example, Conor McGregor, or to put her now with Gaethje, there was also like, it's all about triggering those emotions. If I'm saying something to you, I want to trigger your emotions because I know, usually, almost in all cases, when emotions are high, your performance is going to be less. There are, however, some fighters who, and I was quite kind of handy, I became by reading that beforehand, some people you don't want to get emotional because they're going to fight better. So some people you don't want to do that. But some people you can kind of get a little bit emotional and then you're going to have a benefit from that.
Yeah, I think Michael Jordan used to say he used to make up stories to get angry because he plays better, you know? It's interesting.
Well, that's self-talk.
Yeah.
Right? So some people have that. And yeah, what is self-talk? I always had fast, fluidity, powerful speed, this. But I heard from other fighters that they have negative self-talk, that triggers them to do better. For some reason, I really found in my performances being humble and being more gentleman-like. I had better performances when I look back, right? Even if I look back and I had like a little bit over-exaggeration, I would have a lesser performance.
For somebody who's never been in this cage or arena or ring, can you take me through like what that happens in your experience, in your personal journey, before the fight, that emotion, then walking to the fight, finally the day has come, and then in the ring? Do you like, can you help me imagine what happens?
So I can tell you, but it's been different through the different stages in my career, right?
Okay.
I remember my first fight. You know, you're just training. You don't really know what's going to happen. You know, you have a fight and there's like a lot of nerves. And I was kind of good at calming myself. But yeah, you know you're going to fight. And then, yeah, you're just training hard. There's no advanced things. You're just eating what you think at that moment, which is good. your 5 meals a day, and then the fight days comes. It's all about just doing it, right? Later on, you're going to get better at controlling your energy, controlling your space. Packing your bag becomes autopilot. Now you have to like really, the first time is really like a thing. But later on, if we fast forward, it becomes more autopilot, right? I'm going to pack my bags, more like a ritual. I'm going to have a shower. I'm going to have a prayer. Make me fast, make you accurate. And then later on, it was again different, right? It was just like more about relaxed, not thinking about the fight, just being in the flow with your friends, making jokes, holding on to your energy, Joe. I kind of became good at that. So not, right, because you can easily become, it can go in you and you can become tense, but I become very calm. Yeah, I'm going to do something later. I could kind of see it as like a hard training in my later fights.
And has it been, I'm assuming, because, you know, mashallah, you've had so many fights. Have you been in those fights where you're like, shit, it's way harder than I thought. This guy's actually better than I even imagined. And now maybe you're getting beaten on points or whatever. And you remember what you had to think to switch or to not give in. Because I'm assuming in these, it's like if you're really training hard, this is an assumption. Sometimes, you know, like it's really tempting to say it's good for today, I'm good. But then some people are stubborn and they're like, no, I need the extra gear. Like, what do I need to do?
I became really good at not overtraining, because that's a danger. I have to do more, I have to do more. If you have a wrong coach, he can actually feed you to do more. I really became good at not overtraining, not doing too much, and kind of understanding what I needed to do, what I not needed to do, which people I needed to attract. Yeah, and in the fight, of course, I felt like, oh shit. As you know, it's especially the fatigue thing. You know, when your energy is gone. I don't know if you ever did anything. If you would sprint like a full blast, and then you're out of breath, but then you still need to go 45 minutes. Like, oh, right? That's a little bit the similar feeling. And yeah, I remember in the Pride fights, it was one round of 10 minutes.
Wow.
The second round of 5, and the third round of 5. So 20 minutes in total.
Okay.
And I always remember after 3 minutes, I was like gasping for air. And then, yeah, you still have 7 minutes to go in the first round, right? And unique setting. Japanese fans, very quiet. Very, you know, there's families sitting there, very, very quiet audience. No, but yeah, spectacular memories there. Beautiful memories. Yeah, also in the later, you know, getting the K1 title was a beautiful accomplishment, the dream title. But beautiful memories in Japan.
So you had to do that switch sometimes inside a fight? Like, do you have to think about it? Like, no, I need to wake up or I need to continue?
I think if you have that in a fight, it's already too late.
Really?
Yeah, it's already too late. In my opinion, everything already happens in the training camp. And you have to kind of understand your different gears, right? If you have that surprise feeling, oh shit, in the fight, it's not good. It's not good.
I read also, Alistair, that in 2007, 2008, you had such a tough period because you lost 3 fights in a row. Your mother had to go through cancer. You had the responsibility of a first child. You made, I think, a wrong investment. You lost a lot of money. You hardly had money. And this, I'm speaking all within like a year to 2. Can you tell me more about that?
Yeah, this was 2006, 2007. When I look back, a difficult period in my life. I had a couple difficult periods, which you really have to dig deep and you have to figure out, what am I doing? Why am I doing it? And you're gonna reach a low point. At this moment, my mother got diagnosed cancer. They also said this is the worst kind. She's not gonna have long to live. Indeed, the wrong investments. So I was low on money. What else? My first daughter was born, who was a crybaby. So every night, yeah, there was like waking up and then what is the problem? And there was no problem and we didn't really understand what to do. And we were looking at each other in the middle of the night. And if you have that, you have like a combination of factors. And my body was starting to break down because you need to sleep, right? And then the first loss came, and then the second loss came, and it was tough. It was tough. I remember the third loss, my Pride contract got ripped up, and it was like, okay, what am I gonna do now? So you have to kind of dig deep. And again, what I just mentioned, after a loss, you have to look at the map, right? Where am I going? What am I doing? Who's in there? What's in there? And I was able to change everything and kind of get on the winning track again. But it's tough, right? It's a lot of change and a lot of energy is required to go through that.
I'm imagining.
But also, if I add, so a lot of energy is required to go through that. I went through that actually a couple of times. And then, when you're changing the ingredients of who you are, right? Your team, your location, your nutrition, and it was always based on learning curve, learning what can I do to improve. It also generates it generates a new state of being, but also a lot of power. So there's a lot of resilience, a lot of power, because you're kind of reinventing yourself. And I had to do it because you have 3 losses. So your contract is finished, right? What am I going to do? Am I going to get a regular job? No, we're going to continue this, but we're going to change the map. And it was interesting. We then went to a new team, new coach, fight for the Strikeforce belt, and they got me to lose to an American, but they did not anticipate me changing the map and changing the people, the coaches, and made a beautiful comeback and got the world title Strikeforce. And we were back on the map with that one fight.
That takes a lot of balls and courage to change a team. It's a big decision, because especially if there's some loyalty and friendship, but I guess it was necessary, but I don't think it's easy.
Change is never easy. But I was also forced to do it because, obviously you have 3 losses. Losing sucks. You get your ass kicked, and if you get your ass kicked, it's like you're gutted. You got to figure it out again, and especially after 3 times, confidence is low. You need to do something, and I start training with a coach I attracted, and then different team. I had to fight again for my life. But these new impulses is what gave me the grit and the confidence to get the win again. So it was actually super important. Sometimes change, is good. You need to do it. You need to go for it. You need to embrace it.
It's a good word, grit. I read the book. It's a very good book also. Is it true that at some point you had only 20 euros and you had to choose whether to spend it on petrol to go to train or to eat?
That was this period.
That was?
That was this period. So my mother was sick. My money was in some investments where somebody disappeared with a bag of money. So I was like, it was an apartment needed to be remodulated. Was not finished, so I couldn't rent it out yet. And I literally had 20 euros, and what am I gonna do? Gas, and my daughter was just born, or we're gonna get groceries. So tough periods. I understand the value of money. And you have to go through that.
You think you became much smarter with money after that?
Just very aware of how it is. Maybe a little bit more motivation to, which I then was able to put in my fights and the preparation into the fights.
Yeah, because I'm thinking that
because if you don't have money to eat, you're gonna be motivated, right? You're gonna be very motivated, and I'd had that a couple of times in my earlier career. Later on, I didn't have that, but the 2006, 2007 was the last time I had it. And why did I have it? Again, I put money in investments, for the return, but then it was a wrong investment.
And fast forward to 2023 is, I think, when you retired from fighting, right?
Yeah.
Around that. When does somebody know it's we're good? Like this is enough.
When they are not willing to put the work in anymore. Right? So you just mentioned when you have 100 million in the bank, something's changed. You're not the same person because you need motivation. With me, it was something different. The injury, which was lingering already for a year, I was not able to control anymore. I was not able to kind of contain anymore. So I couldn't train anymore. And that forced me to hang up the gloves.
Yeah, it's an annoying reason.
But it's a legit reason because the body don't want to do it anymore.
I've
And of course, we are our mind, but we're also the body. And yeah, if one of the two can't, then what are you going to do?
I stopped football because of 3 surgeries also and so many injuries.
Where?
ACL, meniscus, scaphoid.
Yeah.
So at some point, and then so many muscle issues, like I kept tearing my calves all the time, and I rest for 10 days, and then I play again, and it just kept coming back. At some point, it doesn't taste good anymore.
Yeah.
You're thinking of so many other things. Like
you're thinking about not getting hurt, and you need to think about winning and scoring and having fun and flow state. And yeah, it's. I was always afraid of the knees. I was never hurt on the knees, but yeah, I know how that feels.
Do you see that you're a great fighter with a great career?
Yeah, it's a beautiful career. Right? I'm very thankful for the journey I was able to walk. Yeah, it's, the belts are in there, the wins are in there. We defeated legends. There's losses, there's comebacks. I mean, it's a great up and down adventure, which kind of kept on expanding. To me, I would say life's work. I'm very proud of it.
Did it bother you, Alistair, that a lot of people focused on your physique and your power and not also the intellect behind everything?
No. I mean, everybody sees what they see, and yeah, who am I to kind of, right? No, to me, it's beautiful. I got a lot of respect, and still people come up to me. Oh, I saw your Brock fight; it was super cool. And the intellect, people can only appreciate if they see it, right? And I was never really that outspoken. I never really, sat down for podcasts or went into depth. We even had the online documentary, but I was deliberately not really speaking too much in it because I didn't want my opponents to kind of be able to gauge, my ability to adapt, grow. So there was like a little bit purposeful also in there.
So this is one of the few times now that you decided to show your personality, I would say.
Well, I'm if people come up to me, I'm very open and positive, right? I think it's really important when fans come up to you. You want to make it a positive engagement. I notice when and I never really did it, but if I was dismissed, I never felt good. So I kind of always, but yeah, we were kind of stayed away from the podcasts because of course you have your fights and people like. In my level, people are analyzing everything, right? Hey, what is he saying? What is he doing? So it's good if the less they know, the better. Even in my interviews at UFC, it would be very
surface.
Yeah, flat. How do you feel? You're good. There was nothing they could get from that. Well, behind the scenes, I was like sleeping high elevation and always experimenting a lot with nutrition and game planning, and yeah, there was like a lot going on.
After the retirement, I read that you went into depression. Is that correct?
No.
Okay.
I never was depressed. I never was depressed.
Then anything I'll say that if it's wrong, this is the best time for me to hear from you. There was that you struggled with also screen addiction. Is that correct?
Yeah. So if there was anything like a depression, it was a screen addiction.
Okay.
So I was screen addicted, which you could say is like a form of depression, but I didn't really experience it as a depression because I was just like, between trainings, happy and behind the screen and scrolling and doing my game. But in hindsight, yes, that was a form of depression. And it came about. Of course, I was training a lot on training camps, and I would train once a day, 3 hours, and then there was like a lot of time towards the next training, and I would kill that time with the phone. And and looking back in hindsight, yes, that was a form of depression, because yeah, it does take away happiness, right? And I was like 5 hours a day, 6 hours a day, 7 hours a day, 8 hours a day. And it is an escape. It was an escape.
So if somebody's listening, can you explain more what is screen addiction? It's just using your phone all the time?
So I would say, I was away from my kids. Fighting in the UFC is great, but yeah, you're away from your family. Body's tired. Yeah. To me, it was, and then slowly addiction builds, and then all of a sudden, and I didn't understand it at the time because I was just like going through, killing time before the training, after the training, but it's not ideal. It's not ideal, and you're gonna realize how you feel after you put the phone away for a month. I did it, put it away, and I just felt so much more energy and so much more clarity and happiness. So and there I found out, hey, I was addicted. Right before, you're just doing your thing, but then I found, hey, I was addicted, really addicted.
How did you know that?
For several years, actually.
Wow.
Yeah.
How did you know that it's an issue?
If you grab your phone without realizing you're grabbing it, and then you have Instagram, you have your 4 apps that you go to, and you don't understand why you're doing it, but you're doing it, and then you put it back, you're addicted. Are you doing that?
I think all of us are addicted to a certain degree, unfortunately. Yesterday, I read that the UAE issued this new law that kids under 15 are not allowed on social media, which is I really like that. I think actually many countries, not many, a bunch of countries started it. I think Malaysia, Singapore, I think Sweden, most of them are under 16, is not allowed. UAE did under 15. And I think finally, imagine as adults we get addicted. Imagine somebody who's 14 and 12 and 9 and you watch them in the mall and in the restaurant they're like this.
It's problematic. Problematic.
It's an issue.
Governments do not understand, they do not fully understand the technology. And I love it when I hear governments putting these bans on, because yes, you are ruining kids. I look at myself, I'm also a lot on my phone. I'm grabbing my phone for no reason. And that was the moment I decided the phone is not going to control me. So I'm an adult, I make my game plans, I make a game plan, I'm not going to use my phone. 30 minutes in the morning, 30 minutes dinner time. And 21 days in, I wake up in the morning and I had such a burst of energy and I felt really good. And I did not understand what had happened, but I know I quit my phone and I know it's something to do with that, but I didn't know. So I start reading, right? And I ordered books and I'm starting reading, and I came across our internal reward system. So we have that, everybody has it. You have an internal reward system, I have an internal reward system. It's linked to our dopamine receptor. And I just resetted this receptor. And by doing this, I was like, I felt, it's also linked to motivation, by the way, so much energy. But I didn't know what I did. So in time, reading, right? So this is in the months. Also, I had a lot of talks with other people. I kind of understand a little bit more about the addiction, how it worked. But it was a very big shift in my awareness. I remember when I saw my other 2 girls, Jazz and Sensi, I had butterflies in my heart. And that's what happens when this dopamine is off balance. Yeah, before I'd go on training camps, come back, and I was always on my phone. Right? The phone was just slurping away the time. And now I was just looking at my daughters. And so, yeah, there was a big change in my awareness, a big change for my life to quit my phone. And also, it created a good performance in the fight I had after. Because, of course, motivation, everything is heightened after.
That's such an important topic, man. Would you go back to fighting?
Well, I'm training,
Hmm.
and we're not going to be making any announcements yet, but we are exploring the avenues, and we can say it is a very exciting environment, so to speak.
Your body feels good?
Body feels very good. Body's healed.
Yeah.
I'm training serious. I love training. I
Nice.
love getting in shape. Yeah, so yeah, there might be something brewing.
Okay, it's good enough. What does love mean to you?
Love means attraction, being good, doing good. Foundation. Love is the foundation
Of what?
of life.
And father of 3 daughters. How does that feel?
Growth. Of course, they're not in Dubai, right? I moved to Dubai, so I'm seeing them a couple times per year. They'll come here or I'll go there. But it's been growth with every daughter. It's different, but beautiful.
Would you want to have kids again?
Yes, but everything cautious and well thought of, and more careful now. More careful.
And you got married, I think, recently, right?
Yeah, got married.
And you
For
moved
the
to
first
Dubai.
time, yeah.
Why did you choose Dubai?
I would say growing market. Every time I've been coming into since 2009, like once a year, like a week, a weekend, 2 weeks. And every time I was here, something unique happened. Met many sheikhs. And always something happened, something positive. So wife loves it.
That's good. I'm happy you're here. I have more questions that I got from the... Can I get the white card? And the card game, the box. Okay. These are things I found in the research, so I want to know your side of it. Okay. Okay, mister. Is it true that your maternal great-grandfather was born as an illegitimate child of King William III of the Netherlands?
That's
True?
correct. That's correct.
Interesting.
So his name is Gijsbert. So my grandfather's Kees. My middle name is Kees, Alistair Kees. My grandfather's Kees, and his his father is Gijsbert.
Okay.
And he was one of 40 illegitimate children of King Willem III.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Second point. You went through testosterone controversies and were always questioned about it. Why do you think?
Great physique.
That's it?
That's it. What else?
Is it like annoying because if you start to win and you're physically strong and you look great, they'll always try to find, like, it just cannot, people cannot
No, but I
accept it.
think this was also in a manner that you see it was like a cleansing process, a maturity process. Fight sport was not regulated. It needed to be regulated. When you look now, it is regulated. Before it was not regulated.
Okay. Tell me about your relationship with performance-enhancing drugs.
There is no relationship.
Okay. Is that something that was running after you too much? Like, I don't know the details, but this is what I found. Were they really pushing on that with you?
No, I think, again, the transfer from, at that time, UFC was growing, right? And this is before the Fox Sport deal, 2016. So I signed with UFC 2011, and they were kind of buying up all the leagues, getting all the talent in one pool, making it the best heavyweight division that was there. And then I would say I was one of the first, hey, that guy looks like he's got muscles. So what happened? I just got extra random tested. That was me. Later in 2015, 2016, when they sold for, what was it? When they went on Fox, everybody got random tested. So I was just like a little bit sooner in the testing pool.
So they want to show that they're implementing all of these new restrictions, right?
Yeah, the cleaning of the sport, because if you look at it in Japan, it was kind of like open market. There was no real commission, but then UFC added the commission, which is an arm of the government
To regulate.
to regulate.
Yeah, because I've seen,
And they used USADA.
there is also, I know in football, there's a lot of that. I remember when creatine was an issue, I think at some point. I remember also a friend, Paul Pogba, who just, I think, went to Miami or America, and he had something and he never knew it will cause this whole issue for him. And I think there's a lot of education, because some of these athletes or professionals like you'd go to a trainer and he says, this is the regimen, these are the things you should take, this is the supplements you should take. And one of the ingredients might really currently be a question mark, and suddenly you're like, yeah, but I was just trying to take care of myself.
There is indeed, every athlete at a certain level needs a performance team or a performance director who's going to kind of go over the athlete with him to kind of instruct. That is the way to go to move forward, yeah. And UFC did a great job in communicating that. And I think now, if you look at it, there's not that many positive tests, right? So they brought the amount of positive tests down.
Did you ever fight and think, wow, the opponent is definitely on a lot of things and that's why he has an advantage?
100% has happened. It even happened in Japan. So these things do happen. And I think less now.
Yeah.
It's more regulated now.
Which it could be a big disadvantage to somebody.
Of course.
You know? You fought in different eras of the sport. Do you think fighters today have it easier or harder?
I would say very difficult question, because there's a lot of distractions today. So it's difficult to establish yourself in something. You need a lot of willpower to keep going. I would say if you know what you're doing, it's more easy today.
If you know what you're doing.
There's less, I would say, less talent, more distractions. So it's easier to kind of, if you have like an iron will and good discipline, you know what you're doing, it's easier to break through now.
You know, I was thinking about this. This is a thought that I'd love to cook with you. I was thinking, you know, when we were born in a similar time, we didn't, like, the maximum probably was Game Boy. Like, that's our Snake on Nokia. Like, you are so limited with entertainment, right? Or you go to the cinema in the weekend.
Nintendo 8-bit.
Yeah. So you get bored of it. After 40 minutes, you're like, oh, okay. And then you go back and play football or train or whatever. So I felt, you know, the Outliers book talks about the 10,000 hour rule. To become an expert at anything, you need to spend 10,000 hours.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, in the era of smartphone, I wish I could zoom out and see how much the smartphones and the level of entertainment have removed being great at something.
Yeah.
Because if I take my son and he's using, let's say, his phone and games 3 hours a day, let's say, 3 times 7, that's 21 hours a week. Now I'm thinking, if he had half of that, let's say I told him 90 minutes you can play games, I could have given him half of 21 hours to train better or to be more. He lost that in 1 week.
Yep.
So that comes back to why when you said talent is less, I think it definitely could be less.
So what happened is the world opened up, right? Globalization, more countries can contribute talent, but everybody's more distracted. So effectively less hours spent, training, perfectioning. But then on the other hand, the go-getters, they have all the information accessible, so they can train better, they can understand nutrition better. So it's an interesting time. Whoever can stay focused now is going to make it, but you need to stay focused.
Today on YouTube, what I popped up was the Islam and Khabib's camp in Dagestan, how all the guys go and like they disconnect for like proper training. And I'm like, okay, that's a good environment for a young
Yeah.
person to go, you
Yeah.
know?
They understand the distraction thing. If you can put your phone down, like what I did, 30 minutes in the morning, 30 minutes dinner time, so you're 1 hour a day and only messages, just cut out music, you will perform better in whatever you're doing. So if you
Cut
can
off
do that.
music, you say?
Yeah, absolutely, of course.
Why?
Because it instigates the dopamine response, makes you happy. You need to sit still and be bored, and you're gonna feel bad. You're gonna feel bad. Try not to eat instead, because you're gonna eat. Right? I'm bored. I'm gonna, you need to not even do that. You need to sit, and you could have writing or painting or create music that you could do, but no impulses. It's the nervous system gets oversaturated.
It numbs your dopamine receptor, right? It doesn't do any, nothing makes
You're
you.
gonna have the less high spike.
Were there choices you made then that you wouldn't make today in your career?
Of course. Of course. If I knew then what I knew now, I'd maybe be undefeated. Maybe.
Okay.
Maybe.
So these controversies are part of your story, but they don't define your whole career. You continue to rebuild yourself, as you mentioned, you competed at the highest level, and now you shifted into a new chapter focused on health, healing, and longevity. Why?
Well, it just happened to work out like that. So remember, I hurt my back already in 2021, kind of managed with a lot of physical therapy, ice baths, to kind of pull off my last fight. Then my body didn't want to do it anymore. And I kind of dove into the longevity, the ice baths, the breath work, the detoxing, all those things you can do. And my body healed. It was a slow process, but it did heal. And I also regained new sense of clarity, energy, happiness, and looking forward. What are we gonna do?
That's what we talked about the first time I met you at the World Sports Summit. You said that's my current focus. Okay, these are cool. A lesson for every fighter.
Lesson for every fighter. It's a combination. You need to work hard. You need to be creative.
Okay.
And you need to surround yourself with good people.
Explain creative.
Creative means winning is not always training harder. You need to be creative. And a lot of my wins, let's say a lot of techniques, I would knock somebody out or knee somebody, and then would come from creativity. I'm just in the gym and I'm like, hey, this is something, and I'm perfecting this movement, this technique, and creating a weapon out of a random situation. And I would practice it over and over again. And again, you mentioned 10,000 hours, maybe a little less, maybe a little bit more, but I would create a weapon. And many times it was something new. Nobody had seen it before, and it would be effective because it was unknown. And some wins there.
Yeah, that's such a good point, because back when there was no social media, I might be absolutely wrong, but I felt people spent more time in the park or whatever, or in the gym, and
messing around. You just need to mess around.
When you see a footballer, I'm a background football, so when I see Ronaldinho or Neymar and they do this crazy, you're like, what did he just do? And and when you watch, you're like, definitely background is street football, because he is doing something. Then you see somebody from an academy, he's an academy player. One touch pass, perfect, but very by the book. And you miss that flair and that magic, which I think now you have, what's his name? Lamine Yamal from Barcelona. When he plays as a young boy, you're like, okay, he's expressing, he's an artist. And even in fighting, Prince Nassim, I remember when he was fighting, it was a weird, unorthodox boxer.
Flow state. And indeed, Nassim was indeed, right? Surprise. Some talent also there, right? With him.
It's interesting how you said some of your knockouts are because of your creativity.
You need to have fun. You need to play around. Always learn. And then,
lesson for every man.
Never stop developing yourself.
Okay, nice. And if you could teach every child in the world one lesson, what would you teach them?
Child.
Mm.
It would be the sport of BJJ.
Okay.
Why the sport of BJJ? Because there's wrestling in there.
Mm.
So kickboxing is not for everybody, right? Or boxing is because it's like striking. But BJJ is for every child. Why? It's wrestling. We all wrestling when we're little. It's techniques. It has the belt system, so there's rank. You can climb in rank. It has the respect, which is to me very important. The older I become, the more important it becomes. It has the group energy, the group values. Yeah, it will be BJJ, which I think is big in UAE.
Really?
Right? Yeah,
That's for my
Abu
son then.
Dhabi and
Maybe better than jiu-jitsu for my son.
Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is BJJ.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
BJJ is, I
yeah,
thought it's
Brazilian
something else.
Jiu-Jitsu.
Okay, so
So
Brazilian
there's
jiu-jitsu.
Jiu-Jitsu is Japanese Jiu-Jitsu, but when you say Jiu-Jitsu is kind of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu,
Okay.
grappling with the gi and the belt.
Okay, now, yeah, it is big actually, even in Abu Dhabi a lot.
Yep.
Okay, we'll do one of those questions. Let's see, random. Tell me.
No, joke.
No, there's nothing surprise. This is something even I'll give you one and you can play with your wife, with your friends. If you're at a boring dinner, it's gonna change the dinner. So we'll choose one by fate for you. Why do you like orange juice, by the way?
Healthy, right?
Is it? There's the saying,
Absolutely.
don't squeeze your veggies, eat your fruits and squeeze your vegetables. There's that nutrition saying, because too much sugar.
And there's indeed the people that are saying that orange juice is sugar, but who believes that?
I don't know, a lot of people.
Yeah, but can you get sick from eating too much orange juice?
No,
No.
no,
Can you get like obese from no? So it's not the same as sugar.
that's true. Which one? I'll ask you one.
All right, let's grab from the bottom.
Okay. I'll ask you.
You're gonna ask
No.
me?
Yeah, I'll ask you, of course. Okay, nice. So I'll ask you, and then you throw this. This is the way to answer. What is the most important thing in a relationship? Bro? Be honest. What is the most important thing in a...
Be honest.
No, you want to copy the same? No, it's asking you to be honest.
Okay, yeah, okay.
But it's also important.
Yeah, be honest. No, I would say, be honest. Be
You
honest.
think a lot of people are not?
I would say the ability to build together, to have great memories together, chemistry. So that's a couple of things. Yeah, communicate, be honest. And it's a beautiful relationship. She's a beautiful person, inside and outside. We've had our growth moments. We've always kind of came back to each other and figured it out. Yeah, anything else more into depth into, I don't know.
It's up to you. It's your question now. Because I think we are living in a time where people are really struggling, whether in their relationships, their marriages. A lot of people don't know how to navigate. It's a good question because the resources are there, the information is there. And I think maybe one of them is what you talked about, is the dopamine receptors completely at whack. So you're not as excited about love and romance and sharing and quality time, maybe?
So you would only know if you do the reset. Are you going to do the reset? Would you do the reset?
I would.
You would?
Yeah. The only challenge I have is most of my work is on WhatsApp.
Are we going to do it together?
Maybe. Because if I say I have to do, I'm a committed
What
person.
do you mean maybe? Like,
What,
if
how
you
will I
say
work?
yes,
How
and
will I work then?
I'll tell you. I'm going to do it anyway, so I have this one moment.
You do like 1 month?
Yeah. And but then we'll we'll figure it out together, and we'll work around your work schedule. Right?
Okay.
We're not gonna. There's no pushing. There's no pressure. It's gonna be very special for you. That I can't tell you.
Really?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's one of the reasons. And I think people don't have resilience and grit. Like I think the world has been designed now in a way where you order food, if it doesn't come in 15 minutes, you're annoyed. If you order a Uber and it's like, you're like, oh, and you're so pissed off. Your instant gratification became so normal.
Correct.
You know, you don't want to wait for anything.
So there's abundance, instant gratification is a problem. The dopamine receptor is a little off balance. All this combined, indeed, you're right.
What are you afraid of?
I'm not really afraid of anything, actually.
Health?
Well, no, not really afraid.
Losing?
I have to think about what I'm afraid of. I'm not really afraid of anything.
Are you afraid of losing someone you love?
I would say maybe my mother. Also a big motivation for me into this new chapter, in this new direction. Struggling with her mental well-being. I see her also age, right? She's getting older. The energy's kind of going down a little bit. She always was smoking cigarettes. I was 13 when I was looking at my mother. Hey, why is she doing that? It costs money, it smells, and it gives you cancer. Then my mother got cancer, 2007. I was 26, 27. And she went through all the chemo. She went to the hospital. She lost her hair. And she's a strong woman. She survived. But she didn't quit smoking. And then she got cancer again on her kidneys, which they had some experimental treatment. Her kidney kind of got damaged, but she survived that. So she's still with us. She's still alive. But and now, years later, I totally understand it. Hey, it's dopamine high. You're gonna have your go-to, right? In my case, it was the screen. In her case, it's the cigarette. Other people will be food. They're gonna be obese. So yeah, wish so well for my mother if she could. But I also understand it's her process. It's her choice. So, but that was difficult. But it is a big motivation when I think of my mother to be like, okay, let's get this into the world and let's get so many people moving, and maybe I can reach my mother through the masses, right? And also to create a better place for my kids, for my girls, right? Because it was also my oldest where I found my own screen addiction.
What does success look like for you today?
I would say healthy mind, healthy body, healthy wife, healthy kids, healthy surrounding, healthy friends. I mean, money is nice. It's not the driving factor. It'll come automatically. It would be great to we're looking at maybe at a potential fight. A masterpiece of a fight on the most beautiful stage. We just came from the pyramids, the Usyk Verhoeven fight, which was
nice.
a great environment, great backdrop. So that would be something.
Do you miss that feeling?
Well, let's just put it that there's something
Cooking.
Charging up. Yes, something has started by seeing it, by experiencing it. But also, my body coming back online, and I just love to train. Right? It's the physique, it's the energy, it's the appearance. Could be something brewing.
I like the teaser. Have you lost someone that when you think of them, your heart aches?
I recently lost my father a couple months ago. And even though we were not close, I'm a father now myself. And there is the real relatability. And there is also the sentence, life happens, right? Life, all of a sudden, it's 10 years later. I think you also notice now that we're the same age. Yeah, and that, you know, sometimes I'll meditate to my father, and emotions do come up. It was a sensitive period. Um, Other than that, I don't have anybody in mind.
Were you close to your dad?
We were not so close, but my father has 5 kids, and I would say I was the closest to him. And there was the relatability was there, I would say.
So even you think when people are not close to a parent, if they lose them, they feel it?
Yeah, of course. Of course. It's
Even
a
if
part
not-
of you. Right? And even you know, if somebody's close, of course, it will have more impact. But if somebody is not close and it still happens, it would be very strange. Oh, my father passed away, and I'm like, that would be very strange. Of course, it's a big part of you. Even if he's not in your life, it's the miss, right? And it's the what if. And you know, I've got a beautiful tan. It's from my father's side. It's the Jamaican side. Right? And I was there, beautiful people there. And I did feel, hey, yeah, there is some legacy of me here. My father told me the story that my great-grandfather on my Jamaican side was a paid slave. And then when slavery got abolished, he had some money and he bought a huge plot of land. And he founded a village. And the village is still there. It's kind of deserted, but at the peak it had 10,000 people living there. And beautiful. I went there when I was in Jamaica, and beautiful history, and yeah, beautiful people. So it's part of me, right? It will always be part of me. So even though our connection out of his 5 children was the strongest, but still it did something to me, and I did pray for him. And my wife was also great in supporting me with the loss, and yeah.
If your father was standing outside the studio after our interview, what would you tell him?
I told him what I told him on the phone, that I'm proud of him and that I love him. And that it's... Because I spoke to him on the phone. He couldn't speak anymore. He was incapacitated, but I knew he could hear my voice, and I told him it's okay. You can let go. We're proud of you. And yeah.
He needed to hear that, you think?
I think so. And that evening, he let go.
Wow.
Yeah.
You think people hold on to life because they're resisting until somebody tells them it's okay?
I believe so, yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Because you reminded me of my grandmother. She was with cancer, and I was in Boston, and she was still alive and struggling. And when I came back from Boston just to quickly visit her, the day I met her, and she was happy to see me. And the next day, like after talking to her, I'm like, it's okay, Grandma, it's okay. She was like a baby, you know?
Yeah.
And the next day.
So to me, these experiences, I became Christian, I became religious. I was always running around, is there more? I don't know. Nobody knows. And then you have these experiences, right? And also my wife with her cat. She dreamt about her cat passing, and then 2 days later it happened. But because of these things, I understand there is more, right? And yeah, also because my father, right? There's certain things you feel, and yeah, you're feeling it for a reason, right? My father couldn't talk to me, but I knew I felt he was hearing me when he was incapacitated. But his caretaker put me on the phone with him, and yeah.
When was the last time you cried?
That was when so I cried twice. So when my father passed away, I shed some tears, but also there was a moment before that where I thought he passed away because I sent an email, but the email bounced back. It was like a return sender. And I thought, huh? He's not answering anymore. Then I thought he passed away. So I had to kind of had some tears. But then all of a sudden, he called me, hey, and this was a couple months before. So there was still some time. I went to him. He couldn't walk anymore. Also at age. I'd not spoken to him a couple of years. But that reinitiation of contact gave us a couple more moments. So I went to him twice to Thailand. He was living in Thailand. And there was some contact, which was very pleasant.
Yeah, you're fortunate to have at least caught him in that last lap,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
I think you needed it also. I think he needed it.
Yeah.
It seems so. Because it's so interesting how he let go after his son told him it's okay.
Yeah.
If you're, can you describe each of your daughters in one word?
Beautiful. All
Each one?
three. Yeah, all three. All three beautiful. All three. My oldest is a warrior.
Nice.
She's very artistic and creating the most beautiful pieces digitally, but also just with paint. So I also used to draw a little bit, but she's like, well, a lot better than me. And yeah, there's Jazz, the middle one, also highly intelligent, beautiful. I think she, I used to wear glasses. She also wears glasses, so like a little bit like me. And then there's the youngest one, Sensi, who's, surprisingly looks like her mom, also like my mom, blonde hair, blue eyes. Dancing always and presenting herself and rides horse. So all three different, very different, but I'm very proud of them. And whatever choice they make, whatever direction they go, I support them fully. Yeah.
Your wife's name?
Sophie.
Sophie. And Sophie in one word.
Oh, magnificent. I have never met a person like her. Brilliant, beautiful, clever, understands me from the get-go, from the moment we met. Highly intuitive person who, without a doubt, pushes me towards my best self. That's, I think, the way to describe my wife.
That's good love, if it elevates you.
Yeah.
Because the ones who have bad love, it's the opposite way.
Well, you notice it, right? What happens to your life?
You notice people, when you see them shine brighter, you know they're in a good
Yeah.
place. If their light starts to diminish, you're like...
That's indeed. If you're gonna hang out with a person, how do you feel? You feel good, and then you can build on that, right? And with my wife, I perform better, I feel better, and it was actually from the moment we met. It's just been a slow but steady change, and I love her very much. And she's awesome. She's also funny.
That's important.
We have a lot of fun together, right?
Yeah, that's medicine.
Yeah.
I believe so.
Love.
Okay, hypothetically, and I pray for you for a long, healthy, joyous life. Now, if you passed quickly, and your
Me?
if you passed away quickly, and your daughters know about this interview, and they know that, you know, they go through life, like you said, life happens, and they know about this YouTube video, and they know that, okay, when we get slapped with life, or it's difficult, or it's challenging, we can always come back to this video every time, and we can skip to this moment. What is important for your three daughters to hear from their dad?
It would be the free rule. Life is going to be hard. It's supposed to be hard, a little bit hard, and sometimes a little bit a lot. But in all times, you need to stay positive. You need to be creative. If it's not left, it's right. You need to, just think about it, and you need to work hard. And that is, to me, the formula for success in life. So there is a formula, right? To achieve things, to stay out of trouble, to have a good life. And I always told myself that positive, creative, and work hard. And I kind of apply that in my sport. Because there's setbacks. You're going to lose, you're going to get damaged. Look in the mirror, and I'm like, oh, cut up, lip hanging. Is that my skull? That is my skull. So you need to stay positive, creative. What can I learn outside of the box, in the box? Which people yes, which people no. And then you need to, at the moment you need to make that walk. If it's to the ring or if it's in an ice bath or if it's to the gym, you need to do it. You need to be able to pull the trigger, right? You need to have. And I was kind of always able to do those three things. Even post-career, right? I was hurt. Okay, what are we gonna do? You need to stay positive. Because if you're like a cranky person, nobody wants to hang out with you. You need to be a little bit happy. And don't take yourself too serious. I was very fortunate. I understood what made me happy. I need to train, I need to do my food stuff, and then you are happy, right? Because otherwise you're not gonna get anywhere in life. Be happy.
Final question. Alistair in one word.
It's difficult to describe yourself because you don't want to, you can only feel, actually, right?
It's a tricky one.
You can only feel, but I would say somebody, maybe a better one would be, how do you want people to remember you? Then I would say positive person, creative person, happy person, person who always did his best, person who made or tried to make the most out of life.
But I still want one word.
One word.
Yeah, because that's an important question. Everybody answers it, but it's a hard question. One easier way to imagine it is if me and you are walking in the street and we see Alistair walking, and you know him well. I'm like, describe this guy. I don't know him. Describe him in one word.
He's good.
Good. Why did you choose that? That was a quick one, you see?
Because you don't want bad. No, good. Hey.
But what made you tell me on the street that this guy is good?
Well, it's like what you said. If you see something, there's an emotion, right? You would want an emotion, and then there would need to be good emotion.
So what makes him good? What makes this guy that you just said he's good? What makes him good? Is his manners, his ethics, his values?
It would be his energy, his resume, and what did he do? Track record. Because everything comes and goes, right? You're gonna have your fights, you're gonna have your titles, but what emotion you imprint in others, that's a little bit, and then you want that to be good, pleasant, right? Hey, you see, hey, good. That's I think comes down to the legacy question. I fought in the beginning. You're fighting for a fight, then it becomes a champion, then another champion, and then in the end it was also a little bit the finances, but it was also legacy, right? And then it needs to be good legacy.
It's a very good answer because there's this saying.
Because what else would it be? Yeah, he was really he is really good. Like, it comes and it goes. You're not gonna, there's gonna be next generation, right? He's really rich. Rich doesn't matter. It's totally irrelevant, right? How would you like to be remembered?
We don't get to switch. This is my show.
No, but from a personal...
I can answer, of course. But before I answer, I'll tell you something you reminded me of. I think it's Maya Angelou who said this, God rest her soul. I think she said people will forget who you are or what you do, but they will never forget how you made them feel. And that's so true. And today I was watching one of your videos, an old video, maybe 15 years old, of you cooking at home or something. And I went to the comments because that's now a thing to do, right? And somebody said, I've watched this so many times and I can't get enough of watching this. One of them was laughing, he's unintentionally funny. Another person, I think, was motivated to see your discipline and all of that. I'm like, people don't forget that, when you see your favorite athlete or a person makes you feel good or enjoy life, or that you can't replace.
So then legacy is also inspirational, right?
Absolutely.
Inspire people.
Yes.
So yeah, we're looking at you know, I dove into the longevity stuff. It was great, but that could also maybe be another fight coming after, right? So of course we're gonna do that, but then the longevity thing, and then break a record there. Become like a 125 years and inspire people, because it has to do with healthy living, right? That's what we do understand, healthy living. Get to so yeah, inspire is a big word.
To answer your question, I think I hope they remember me as somebody who made them think and question, because I think God gave us a beautiful machine or engine in our head. Like you said, you use it for
Reason.
creativity, and it's used to challenge ideologies and thoughts. And if I can just make you think, I think I've done well. Think, like even today when I do this show, everybody's like, we pause and we ask ourselves this question. So I'm happy. The card game is not to make millions. Well, I'll never make millions from it, but I know I'm taking conversations to homes that probably never had a deep conversation because everyone is distracted. But if they sit as a family for half an hour and they ask a question that I'm helping.
I have to say I like because it's real conversation. I like real conversations. Yeah, my wife I also have that a lot with my wife.
Nice.
Yeah, a lot at the dinner table. She'd be like, "Hey, how did that make you feel?" I'm like, that triggers something, right? Activate, yeah.
Thank you for today. This was good. I appreciate it.